So this came up in conversation the other day, and I thought it might be fun to do a video on it. Basically, to start the video, I'm going to ask you a question, okay? And then I'm going to give you the answer. So the question is, what's the difference between a sea story and a fairy tale? I'll let you think about it. Okay, so you see, in a fairy tale, it begins once upon a time, and in a sea story, it begins, dude, this is no bullshit, man. So, with that said, dude, this is no bullshit, man. When I was in Monterey, one of the first things I did was bought a 1978 Triumph Spitfire. Now, these cars are so much fun. They're not muscle cars by any imagination. They're not particularly fast, but what they do, they're very lightweight and they have a very decent suspension. And so, if you've never driven a sports car, you probably can't relate to this, but I'll try to explain it as best I can. The departure characteristics of these cars are very easy to read. You know when you're about to skid out, or when you're about to lose traction. And so that's the real advantage to having a car like that. Now, remember, I'm living in Monterey, California at the time, and that is nothing but curvy roads. So you're either on the shoreline doing the curves of the coast, or you go up into the foothills and take those, and that's more more fun curvy roads. And I wasn't a particularly cautious kid. In fact, I mean, I'm still the guy in the office that people won't ride with, but I was way worse back then. So. This story is really about how I took the Spitfire off-road. So, to set the story out, it's December of, gosh, it must have been 92, and I was driving from Monterey back to China Lake to see my folks for the holidays. And there's a couple of different routes that you can take, but my favorite to take went from San Lucas to Coalinga through the mountains. Like, you could go down and around and take some more straight shots, but no, I really liked to take, I think it was, and now I'm blurring on where it was, but I actually, you know what, I will put a link to the exact spot that I'm about to talk about in the description. But I just loved that road. It was this great mountain pass, lots of tight turns, and I had driven it probably a half a dozen times, between the two different ways, probably more than that. Probably a solid dozen by this point. You figure I had bought the car in July. So, I'd been going back and forth. I took a lot of trips back when I was out there. But I'm coming through the road. It's December. It's just, pitch black out in the mountains. And I'm coming down the road, and I make this sharp right-hand turn. And I mentioned earlier that the departure characteristics, you can feel it. You know when the car's going. Not this time. I had no clue. Black ice apparently is a thing that I'd never really had much experience with. So I crank the wheel to the left. I'm sorry, to the right. Car keeps going basically straight, and now I'm crossing over into the other lane, and there's a semi coming in the opposite direction. I know this sounds like I'm bullshitting you, but this is no bullshit, dude. This is really how it worked out. And he's blaring his horn, and I'm like, I have no control. I crank the steering wheel all the way to the left. It still really does basically nothing, but I get off the pavement and onto the earth. And once I leave the icy pavement, the car goes, it cranks to the left, and then goes right over a little embankment and jams nose down into the ground. And I mean, I am terrified. I'm absolutely terrified. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't know anybody for 100 miles. It's before cell phones, so I'm just, how am I going to get out of this one, man? I am in so much trouble. And as I'm walking back I get out of the car, and I look, and I just see that, oh yeah, it's nose down, it's pretty bad. And as I'm walking back to the road, because the semi that I almost hit had stopped, I walked back, and there's just bits and pieces of car all over the place. And I'm looking down, and I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be a total. And I get to the truck driver, and he's just like, "Oh my God, that was crazy." I scared the hell out of him too. He didn't want to be responsible for killing the man in the tiny mini car. But he gave me a ride over to the farmer's house. There's a farmer just to the west of where this was, and I call a tow truck from there, and I'm talking to this guy, and he's like, yeah, we actually had to move the fence line because so many cars were going off that curve into that field that they would smash into my fence, and I'd have to come out and repair the fence, and I'd have to take them to court sometimes to get them to pay for it, or to go through their insurance company, and so it was just easier for me to route the fence around and give you a nice pocket for you to put your cars when you're getting out of control like that. And I thought that was a very practical decision on his part. So the tow truck comes out, grabs the back end of the Triumph, and winches it out of the ditch. And I look at the car, and I'm like, oh, all these little bits and pieces and car parts and broken, flotsam and jetsam. That was all just from years of cars doing exactly what I did. And my car was actually in pretty good shape. In fact, started it up and followed the tow truck driver back into town so I could get some cash out of the ATM to pay for the tow, which was, again, before debit cards. And I was, 19? I didn't have a credit card. And yeah, all's well that ends well. I mean, I finished that drive all the way home. I was a little more timid behind the wheel for a bit, a little spooked, but it didn't take me too long to get back at it. And anyway, so that's Sea Stories with Alex for today. And I'll come up with something else soon. I'll talk to you later.